The film begins with a traitor carrying a briefcase, heading towards a meeting point. On the same street, SWAT officer Rose is patrolling. She suddenly notices the traitor passing by with the briefcase. Rose senses something unusual and decides to follow. At that base, a robber awaits someone. The traitor reaches the base, glances around and enters. Rose follows the traitor to the base, observing from outside. The robber and the traitor exchange greetings, and the robber leads the traitor inside the base. Sensing trouble, Rose quickly calls her teammate. While SWAT officer Tony is patrolling, his phone rings.
Hello?
Rose quickly informs Tony of the situation.
They're buying and selling. You will be right here.
What?
He swiftly heads towards Rose. Rose takes action first. She enters the base and ascends the stairs slowly. Rose enters an empty room. From behind, the villains appear. As Rose continues searching, she suddenly sees the boss, Dr. Lee, the traitor, and the robber standing behind her. Dr. Lee approaches, making Rose retreat in fear.
Who are you?
Dr. Lee asks Rose who she is, and she identifies herself as SWAT.
You can do games. Hurry up.
All three laugh in disbelief. Dr. Lee questions the traitor about the briefcase.
Come here. Why you got? Hey, come on.
Dr. Lee orders the robber to fetch a gun, and he promptly obeys. Tony is still searching for Rose.
This baby is so innocent.
The robber hands the gun to Dr. Lee, and the traitor returns the briefcase.
Hey. Hey. Hey.
Rose stands helplessly, witnessing the events unfold. The robber opens the briefcase, revealing stacks of money. Both sides successfully conclude the deal.
Okay.
Enraged, Rose points her gun at Dr. Lee and demands answers.
Put the gun.
The traitor leaves.
Hey.
Dr. Lee and the robber shoot at Rose. Tony hears gunshots and rushes in. The traitor casually walks away. Dr. Lee and the robber wildly shoot at Rose, who fires back at them. The robber hands the briefcase to the boss and stays behind to deal with Rose. A few seconds later, Rose manages to subdue the robber. As the traitor leaves, he encounters Tony and shoots at him continuously. Tony immediately retaliates against the traitor. Dr. Lee hastily retreats downstairs. Rose follows. Tony sees Dr. Lee running downstairs and fires continuously at him. The traitor and Dr. Lee join forces to shoot back at Tony. Rose rushes forward and fatally shoots the traitor. Dr. Lee turns and shoots at Rose. Tony sees this and shoots back at Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee quickly flees. Tony gives chase, but is a step behind. Enraged and frustrated, Tony remembers Rose and runs back to her. Tony calls out to Rose in vain. Furious, he sets off to find Dr. Lee. Tony persists in his search for Dr. Lee everywhere. Dr. Lee on the top floor of an abandoned house, observes Tony. Tony sighs and notices someone resembling Dr. Lee on the floor above. He quickly advances into the house. Tony hastily ascended the stairs, but his movements were deliberate. Dr. Lee hid behind a wall, waiting for the right moment to strike. He glanced towards Tony. Dr. Lee rushed out, firing at SWAT officer Tony. Tony quickly dodged the bullets. In anger, Tony immediately fired back at the boss. Dr. Lee fled, with Tony in pursuit. Dr. Lee followed behind Tony, unaware that the boss was right behind him. As Tony turned around, Dr. Lee's gun was aimed at him. Dr. Lee threatened and ordered him to drop his weapon. With a smirk, Dr. Lee kicked Tony and fired towards him. With years of training, Tony swiftly counterattacked, causing Dr. Lee to tumble to the ground. In pain, Dr. Lee reached for his gun, but was grabbed by Tony, who punched him repeatedly. Dr. Lee still found time to praise the SWAT team. Consumed by rage, Tony swiftly drew his gun and shot the pleading boss dead. After taking down Dr. Lee, SWAT officer Tony still cried out in agony at the loss of his teammate. Tony gazed out the window, his sorrow evident on his face.